friends and enemies. Today, a very special CBP episode. There was some king making done on the weekend, some CBDC news. What else? I don't know. We've done a lot of stuff here today in the last, or a lot of stuff in the last few days. It's been busy, Len. What's going on? Are you ready for tonight? How do you feel? I got to change my tag here. My tag is still the Access of Easy tag. What should I change it to? I'll decide while you give your intro.
Silence. I mean, it's fucking good, Joey. What an interesting few days we had, isn't it? And now we have a new leader for the Liberal Party. It looks like we're going to have a new prime minister not too distant future, followed up by an election shortly thereafter. So it's going to be very interesting what's going to happen next little while. And on top of that, so we changed the hour. Changed the time by an hour.
Yeah.
That's what happened. And almost instantly as we did that, it turned into spring. It's like a light flicked and it was switched, and the sun is shining, the weather's better, more daylight, so at least longer. It appears to be longer. So it's awesome, right? Like, it's just bring it on. Summer is around the corner. The winter that we were experiencing in many respects may be coming to an end.
The winter of altcoins is never ending. With the winter of the solar cycle is coming to an end. I was just outside with my wife and daughter. We went for a walk here before the show started. There's a woman probably a little older than me, I guess like in her early to mid 40s, jogging in what looks to be like a 4-inch pair of shorts and one of those like running tops that has the heart monitor plus it's like, I don't know what you call it. It's like a posture thing, like keeps you upright. It's like strapping your shoulders back. I don't know if it's that warm. I think it's like probably 15 degrees outside, but good for her for getting out there. She's really done with winter.
I was out with shorts. Just
shorts
like
is one thing. 3-inch shorts and a tank top is a different story.
No, I was shorts and a hoodie, and it was like very comfortable.
Yeah,
like that. As long as they stay in the sun, and once you get in the shade, it would get to be a little chilly. Considering there's still lots of snow on the ground.
Yeah,
depending on where you are.
Slowly but surely, it'll fade. It's starting to fade. Let's get in the show. We're gonna do the sponsors first. EasyDNS. I bought a domain on the weekend. I did, yeah. No, I have nothing to talk about on that front, at least for the moment. But
did you use the promo code to get 50% off your initial purchase?
I didn't. I thought that was kind of cheap, so I didn't do it. I paid the full price. But you can use your promo code, the CBP Media promo code, and get 50% off your domain. You can't beat it. The process was really easy. You pick the domain you want, you pick the suffix you want, and then you just buy it. I think you actually save money too, Len. So I bought it for a year, but if you buy for like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you save a gradually increasing percentage of the total. I didn't know that. And so when I bought mine, I just bought it for a year, did the automatic renewals, done and done. So as long as I don't change my credit card number, which is to say, as long as I don't get scammed by an Indian call center sometime in the next year, I should be fine. It'll just renew on its own. Not to mention, of course, you can bring your own domain over to EasyDNS if you want. Why would you not do that? I don't know. If you have a domain somewhere else, you're crazy. You should be doing it with Mark. And then, of course, for the Bitcoin enthusiasts, Len, they got all the virtual private server stuff you want. You can run a Nostra relay, Bitcoin node, nodeless implementation. You just spoke to UTXO last week, actually, I believe. So you can find out more about what he's up to these days, not nodeless, but other stuff. Anyway, EasyDNS has everything you need when it comes to domain and registrar, and Mark is your guy if you need something like that. Go to the website, easydns.com. Use the promo code CBPmedia, 50% off your first round of buys. I'm considering buying Carnival.io. Is it too late?
See if it's there. If not, .ca, .whatever, right? Like whatever.
.win. Is .win and suffix? I'll find out. Go ahead. Who else we got?
Always winning.
Sponsors.
Yeah, look, I'm looking at the Moscow time behind me, 1,256. Like, that's pretty cheap, if you ask me. But NFA, of course, because what I'm talking about is buying Bitcoin. And who are you going to buy Bitcoin with? Strictly buy, if you're in Canada, with Bull Bitcoin. Why non-custodial? These are the guys you want to deal with because they're not going to hold on to your Bitcoin. Lots of stories of people getting rugged when you buy and have somebody else hold on to it. These guys are not going to do that because once you do the buy, in order to finalize it, you have to provide a Bitcoin address, and you want a non-custodial exchange to do business with. Also, if you not just want to buy, you could sell. Maybe it's a good time to sell. I don't know. It's your choice, but Bull Bitcoin will be happy to facilitate that exchange. And you could do it not just with Lightning, but on-chain is very cheap these days, continue to do that, but Lightning is an option for people who do want to delve in that as well. A couple other things you could do with Bull Bitcoin. Number one, you could start spending your Bitcoin one of two ways. You could pay your bills, but again, like I mentioned, price of Bitcoin not very high. I'm not sure who would want to do that right now, but the option is there. Also, you could buy gift cards, so you can start spending your Bitcoin indirectly in the real world. But again, price of Bitcoin not very high compared to last little while. Maybe you want to hold off on that just a little bit. Either way, lots of different options for Bull Bitcoin. Check them out. Open an account. Use our promo code below, or referral code, and if you do that, $21 added to your account. And not just that, they're also in Europe, so they're invading the other side. So they'll be subjected to digital euros, though.
I love it. Okay, so a couple things. One, Huddle D just sent me a text pointing out that the Twitter feed is not working. So if you're on YouTube, tell all your friends to come to YouTube instead of going to Twitter. I will do the same. I'll send out a tweet. The service has been under attack today. Did you see this? This story about that Ukrainian IPs. I mean, you can originate an IP anywhere, so it's not necessarily an indictment of a Ukrainian person, but responsible for a massive coordinated cyber attack, nation state level, Papa Elon claims. What do you make of that?
I'd like a little bit more details surrounding this. This is obviously very preliminary. Until they do it in a thorough investigation, I guess we could point fingers, but let's not incriminate people just yet. Let's find out a little
bit more. This show incriminates people early. That's what we do on this show. We are the incriminating...
We're the incriminators. That's what we are. I'm gonna get the shirt.
Incrimination operation over here is what the problem is. So here we go.
That's incredible, and it's been like that for a while, right? Like it's been that since this morning at our time.
It's been shitty. So whoever... I usually use Grok a few times a day, and this one's been kind of it's been hit and miss today. So I don't know, not great.
So Elon either has to beef up his security or piss less people off, or maybe a combination of the two. Because what's going to happen if you know what? This is just a shining example. What are the alternatives out there? Well, there's a decentralized one that seems to work all that well, and it doesn't seem to go down. Nostr. Check it out.
Working right now. Let's do some boosts.
Always working. Do you want to do boosts?
Yeah, that's what I said. Let's do some boosts.
I got a couple. I got to get off. Jer, he does this twice this week, 2,000 sats each. Number one, he says, I hope Igor never shows up. # Glenn did not kill himself. I did not.
Okay.
And number two, Jer writes 2,000 sats. He says, great rip with two legends. That's with me and UTXO.
Nice.
And yeah, it was a fun rip. And I hope a lot of people got exposed to Nostr and started using it. Look what's happening with Twitter, X. So that's a shining example why you'd want to find something else that's decentralized, that somebody that doesn't own and control the platform. Nostr it is.
Totally.
Maybe a little bit more difficult to use. Heck, Bitcoin kind of fits those things, right? Bitcoin's not that easy to use, a little more challenging, but you could always get access to it as long as you have internet access.
Totally. Good for you all the same. If you haven't listened to the UTXO interview, you should. He's been on the show twice or three times now. Twice? Okay, yeah. Twice. Always a popular guest. The shows with him get a lot of good feedback, and this one's no different. So if you haven't checked it out yet, it's definitely worth your time.
And this Wednesday, I'll be talking to Nuclear Bitcoiner, a.k.a. Ryan.
Nice.
And it's going to be a good chat because also today there has been some movement on the front of Ontario Energy, and they're going to be putting tariffs on the electricity that they're exporting to the United States. 25% is going to be imposed on that electricity. So good chat with that. And we'll see what else is up the nuclear side of things.
Looking forward to that. Do you have any more boosts?
No.
Okay. So this week, Ryan coming through on Wednesday. That's gonna be hot. I wasn't on. I will be on the Your Life, Your Term show this Wednesday. So I don't know when that comes out. That should be fun. And I think that's it. Do we have anything else? Access of Easy. If you haven't checked out that podcast yet, definitely go check it out. You are now listening to Bitcoiners talk about cybersecurity thanks to this Lazarus Bybit thing. And Len and I have been talking about Lazarus and other cybersecurity topics for the better part of 2 years now for Access of Easy over on the EasyDNS network there. It is critical that you learn this stuff before you get sniped by one of these hacks. And there are tons of ways this stuff is going on, not only in your personal life, but, like we always talk about in the DNS read, like your website might not be secure. Your email might not be secure. Your phone, definitely not secure. all these things, right? Telegram, WhatsApp, Signal, you name it. You never know how many different ways are out there for you to get got, and people are getting got more and more, it seems like. So definitely check all those things out. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with, I guess we'll start with Bitcoin news, but there is a big story on the Canadian side. We'll wait till the back half to do.
So maybe we'll cut the Bitcoin side a little bit short, because that Canadian stuff may drag on a lot longer.
Sure.
The Bitcoin stuff, the biggest one obviously is the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. Like I can't, like, I have to say I wasn't expecting this.
You are the flag bearing bear when it comes to all things ETF, reserve, government. I need to hear you say that this is better than you thought it was going to be.
It's way better than I thought it was going to be. It could have been, right? Like, let's be honest, it could have been a whole lot fucking worse, and it was not. And I can't even begin to name all the ways it can be worse, but what we have was presented to us, as long as they proceed with what they're saying, it could easily go sideways and change it. But I'm going to just base on what they say. It doesn't sound all that bad. I mean, it could be better. Let's be honest. It's not perfect, but it's far from shitty. So let's take it for what it is. I'm actually kind of shocked that this happened. I was expecting something way worse. Shitcoins involved. And who knows what else, right? I mean, I had a lot of different ideas, but this is not too bad. So the one thing I'm just shocked, though, the price of Bitcoin right now, 79,000. So that's cheap, right? Like,
depends when you come down, right? I think last time it was 79. I'm trying to think when Maya was born, it was in the 70s, I'm pretty sure. And some of my friends were giving me dap, like, oh man, new highs, blah, blah, blah. What a month for you was a Trump win, 70s.
And Bitcoin. She was born when? October, November?
She was born in November. And so, I won't give you the exact date, but you can do the math yourself probably and find out, it was around that 70s area. And people now are having a meltdown because in the middle of a broader market sell-off that I think is being at least partially orchestrated by the Trump administration to force rates down. I said this last week and the week before. I still stand by that thesis. Bitcoin selling off. Does anyone really care that we're back where we were 6 months ago, 4 months ago, 5 months ago, whatever it's been? Should you care about that given the rest of the news?
Well, the one thing that is surprising, regardless if you care or not, is just the immediate reaction to the news. There was a sell-off. It wasn't like that was due to market conditions. The sell-off was due to the fact that the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve came out, and whatever was included in it didn't jive with people that were quote unquote trading Bitcoin. I don't understand why. Right? This is like the nation.
Maybe sell the news. Remember when the ETFs came out, Len? There's a pretty significant drop then too. I remember talking to you and the bull guys. I was probably a couple of beers in on a Friday night, and I ended up taking some money off my line of credit to buy Bitcoin at like 41 or 42, I forget. And because that was just another example of people they're finicky, right? Anyway, sorry, keep going.
I can't believe that they are finicky. This is the United States. It's not like, and with all due respect, it's not El Salvador making a Bitcoin move here. It's the United States, right? Like, this is huge. This should have made a huge impact to the price positively. It didn't. So I say that's actually a good thing, because it gives us an opportunity to buy more on a cheap if you think that the price is going to go up. Whatever. So the pros to let's be honest, there are some cons to this, slight cons, and I'll find them. But the pros are there because they're saying potentially using shitcoins to increase their Bitcoin reserve.
That's so great. That is
no guarantees, but the potential's there.
Okay, let me ask you, did you listen to, if you haven't, you should. Actually, I recommend everybody do this. David Sachs, you can say whatever you want about the guy. I've been critical of him at times in the past and supportive of some stuff they said in the past. He did a 15 or 20 minute interview one-on-one with Jason Calacanis on the All In podcast. Now, David Sachs used to be on that podcast. He's arguably the most popular guy on that show and probably the most successful guy on that show, including if you add Chamath. He did 20 minutes with Jason, and Jason pushed him on a couple of things that I thought he gave really good answers to. One was the difference, like you mentioned, between the crypto asset stockpile and the Bitcoin strategic reserve. And when Calacanis asked him, is it possible that what you'll see is selling of these other tokens, including Ethereum, to shore up or add Bitcoin to the reserve? And Sachs said, yes, that is something we are considering doing. Huge. That's number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, Calcanus asked him, why don't we just add a crypto tax? It's very, very de minimis, the most de minimis of de minimis taxes to each crypto transaction paid in that native token. And those little taxes, those 0.01% fees, get added to the reserve and the stockpile, and then the U.S. can do what they want with them. And you know what David Sachs told them? No, we're not doing taxes. That's in lockstep with the rest of the administration's, I think, thought process on taxes. You've seen this a bunch now, this discussion about how they're going to knock down or knock out entirely income taxes in favor of tariffs and other means, right? The External Revenue Agency, as Trump likes to call it, is about to get formed, with the Internal Revenue Agency being deleted. I thought those were two good questions. The other thing I thought Sachs was pretty clear on is that they are going to treat Bitcoin differently in the eyes of the law than the other tokens. There's going to be no more claims of intrinsic value made by these shitcoiners to say that, okay, this thing is going to be faster than Bitcoin, better than Bitcoin, more decentralized than Bitcoin, and then they cannot then claim that it's not a security. That's big, because that really puts a stop to a lot of the rug pull nonsense, number one. Number two, he did also say that if you want to issue NFTs or meme coins, as far as collectible value, you can do whatever they want. And I thought he made a great distinction that the reason to start a token and the reason to buy and sell tokens are all very different things. And Bitcoin has a little bit more of an alignment than the other tokens do, the other NFTs and ordinals and meme coins and even some of the alts. It was a great 20 minutes. And Sachs, when he's not worried about his politics and having to swim upstream against that crowd that's usually on All In, he's sharp as a tack. And I think everyone should take some time and listen to that. Whether you like All In or not, whether you think it's a good podcast or not, doesn't matter. You're doing yourself a disservice by not listening to the guy who is in the ear of Trump on Bitcoin policy for 20 uninterrupted minutes with a friend of his. It's very, very good. And I recommend you take some time and tune in.
I've never once listened to that podcast.
I'm going to send it to you. It's 20 minutes long. That's worth your time, honestly, because you will get something out of it. I promise you'll get something out of it. Everybody will.
Well, with respect to the SBR, the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, the wording they're using is interesting, because they're saying it's going to be, quote, budget neutral strategies for acquiring additional Bitcoin, provided that those strategies impose no incremental costs on American taxpayers, end quote. Mm-hmm. That's very telling. So the fact that they aren't going to go out there and increase their debt specifically for buying Bitcoin, I think that is a good thing in a way, temporarily, because if they did that, that's an admission that the US dollar is on its way out. But in the long run, it probably is the right move to do, because the US dollar is on its way out. So you might as well exchange whatever value you can right now and try to accumulate as much corn as possible. But this move just signals to the market that the US dollar is still king of the world, and it's going to be for at least some time. For how much longer, who knows? One of the interesting things, though, this potentially could open a door for maybe paying taxes, federal taxes, with Bitcoin. And by doing so, then it would be a budget neutral strategy, because the U.S. isn't going into debt. They're just simply collecting what's they're owed. And in that case, it would not be in U.S. dollars. It would be in Bitcoin. So maybe that is an option. That would be quite a bridge to cross, because I think they would first have to change what Bitcoin is. Where right now in the United States, if you do spend it, you're going to be subjected to taxes on it, the capital gains tax. So they first would have to address that issue. And then once they do that, then allowing people to pay for taxes in Bitcoin. So it's possible, but I think there's just a lot of jumps they have to do to get there. Now, with respect to the SBR, there is some cons, right? Like there are some, like, do we have proof that they own whatever Bitcoin they have, or will we have proof? I hope we do. If we don't, then it's just, trust me, bro, just like the gold reserves they claim to have. I think they have the gold reserves, but again, I can't prove it, so it's just a thought more than anything else. So hopefully they are able to provide some sort of proof with the Bitcoin that they own, or they do currently own. The second question is, who's going to have custody of it? Is it going to be the U.S. government? I think we talked about this last week.
It's going to be in a cold card somewhere.
It'd be cool.
It's going to be with Hunter's cocaine in the White House.
That'd be fucking cool, right? Open dime around Trump's neck. Like that'd be fucking mint. But
Yeah.
that's, again, these are cons, because I suspect that we probably may not get an answer to this, which maybe I'm wrong. I hope we get one. But until they give us that answer, it doesn't sit right with me. But there's another huge con here. By doing this is a political move that Trump did, right? And anyone that is anti-Trump is going to look at this move and say this is something we should undo.
Anti-Bitcoin, undo it. Yeah.
Yeah. So theoretically, in 4 years, if a Democrat president gets elected, this type of executive orders is going to potentially be undone, because they're going to look at it as a Trump thing. Anything Trump did, or a lot of things Trump did, is bad, blah, blah, blah. And here we go. So that's another thing it's potentially a con with this. But another thing is the price. I think eventually the price is going to pump from this. And that's a con for you and I, Joey, and everybody else out there, because it's going to make it harder for us to buy.
Who's the U.S. government? Great example, maybe the best example of slow money, like I talked about a few weeks ago. Put in a reserve, time lock it, make it apolitical through programming. You just don't have that option with gold or treasuries or anything else, right? But you do with Bitcoin. You can set the price floor this way, which is huge. Yeah, I mean, look, the other thing I thought was important from that conference, or the Crypto Council Summit, or whatever they called that thing, is that, as you mentioned there, King dollar not going anywhere, at least not in the eyes of the United States. Discussion there about how stablecoins will bring U.S. dollar demand to new levels around the world, and make it easier to not only acquire and use dollars, but to fund government operations that way. So it's interesting, right? There's going to be a lot of new things coming. Again, when we first started the show, we used to talk about how certain actors, certain groups, certain, individuals, whatever, could manifest outcomes. And I'm not talking about, your vision board in your room, your hippie university girlfriend visualizing an A on her exam. I'm talking about, I have all the money, all the influence, and I will steamroll not only like another company, but a nation state, like an entire hemisphere of nation states to get what I want. And when Larry Fink comes to you and says, yeah, we're doing a Bitcoin ETF, that's huge. You start buying Bitcoin. When Larry Fink says, yeah, we're going to tokenize the entire economy, that's huge. And when these guys on the Crypto Council say, yeah, we're going to use US dollars on stablecoin networks to pump demand and keep the dollar king, that's huge too. So shout out again to Mark Goodwin, Bitcoin Dollar. He talked about this years ago at this point, and I think was broadly, I hate to say it, but ignored by a lot of otherwise, I think, smart Bitcoiners. You should read the Bitcoin Dollar if you haven't. It's like, a couple hundred pages max. It's a small book. I think it's like behind me there. See that little one in the middle? Can you see that? Very small.
It's very blurry and it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I mean, the point is the small book. It's smaller than the hotel Bible you see. And like, it's got a lot of good stuff in there, and it's a good thesis that I think is playing out in front of us. We are living in interesting times, Len, big time. And I think for a lot of people at this point, the anti-Bitcoin hysteria is becoming political. Like you mentioned, Trump likes it, so it must be a scam. Like, those people are retarded. And then you have the other people who say it'll never catch on. It's just not easy enough. Like, you're not paying attention to the amount of inertia behind this thing. And you can say whatever you want about price crashing and, broad market sell-offs, risk on, risk off. It's levered Q. It's high beta Qs. It's what, like, I don't care. At this point, it truly has become a situation where people who own Bitcoin no longer have to explain anything to anybody. There's tons of resources, tons of opportunity to learn why this is happening, how fast it's happening. And when we talk about the EU CBDC story later, why you should care. And if you don't care, then eat your bugs, smoke your dope, crank your hog, go to sleep, and shut the fuck up, because you're going to get left behind. That's all there is to it at this point.
There's another thing that potentially could come out of this. There may be a Bitcoin bond, right?
That's the story, right? Saylor is there, Mr. Bitcoin Bit Bond, basically himself. And I don't know. What do you think it's possible? Like, do you think it's on the table?
I think it's probably very low in terms of a realistic outcome, but it's on the, at least you could potentially measure it as 1%. Because it's one thing they could start issuing the yield of their bonds instead of USD. It could be the Bitcoin that they hold, right? Like, that's a potential they have.
I love it.
And it's not going to impact anybody, and they could just issue tons of bond, and we have this thing that we're holding on, we seized,
Pay
and
you
we can
back
start
in
using that.
currency. Pay you back in currency that we print, and buy Bitcoin with it's.
Or there's so many different ways you could look at this, but not one thing we didn't touch on it. We should though, is if the United States is doing this, what's stopping anybody else from doing the same?
I'll tell you what's stopping them. Canada's never going to do it. We're literally pulling American liquor off the shelves. We're so stupid over here. We're never going to do anything, even if it's a good idea. Trump said in the State of the Union last week, that guy could cure all manner of terminal illnesses in the States, around the world. And there's just half the people will never clap. They'll never stand. They'll never agree. They'll never support. These people are the ones who are going to be left behind now. Because it used to be the case that over a 4-year presidential term or any 4-year, 5-year period, not enough happened for you to really find yourself in a generational deficit. But now it's happening. Already over the last 4 years, if you didn't own Bitcoin, how did your assets do compared to Bitcoin? How'd they do? How did your house do? How did your stocks do? How did your gold do? How did your bonds do? How did any of that stuff do compared to Bitcoin? Anyone? It's crickets from that side. Eventually,
look beyond your borders, Joey.
I know, but
look,
other countries are not going to do it either. You think any European country who hates this guy, any EU country is going to be no, we have to do it.
I can name 1.5.
No EU, a European country maybe, not an EU, not a Eurozone country. There's no way. There's no Eurozone country that's going to do this while Trump is in power. None.
Czech Republic.
Are they Eurozone?
Norway?
If they are Eurozone, if they use the euro, they ain't doing it. I'm telling you
Czech
that right
Republic
now.
doesn't? What does Norway use?
I gotta see. The Eurozone: Austria, Belgium, Croatia, Cyprus, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, the Netherlands, Portugal, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain. The 7 non-Eurozone members: Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Denmark, Hungary, Poland, Romania, and Sweden. Czech could do it. They could do it. They're not in the Eurozone. I would put a good bet on Hungary or Poland to do it as well, honestly. And Sweden,
Norway comes to mind that they may want to do it. I don't know why, but I think they grasp the idea of something like hard money. And I truly believe that they, and so I think that you have a few of these countries start doing it. It's going to spiral then out of control, and everybody's going to have to do it, because who would want to be left behind? Now, why would Russia want to not do it? Why would China now
Russia
not
and China
want to do
for sure. I think Russia and China for sure. I think Russia is, people have been talking for a year or more now, Russia as a nation already mining. And so when I see stories like the U.S. doing the reserve, Russia's quiet. Putin says stuff like, you can't stop Bitcoin. How much more do you need to hear? How much more do you need to hear? But there are people out there who we know, they're friends of friends, family members, whatever, who are like, Putin's a Bitcoin guy. It's got to be a scam. Trump's a Bitcoin guy. It's got to be a scam. It's money for who, Len? Friends and enemies. This is exactly what you expect. Good money comes for everybody at some point, and you get it at the price you deserve. And it's getting higher for us, unfortunately.
So as long as they adhere to what they say they're going to do, because they have a framework, they released it. We talked about it. It seems like we're both very happy with could be better, but it could be a heck of a lot worse, right? So as long as they follow suit, right? That's a wonderful thing. Because a lot could happen in the next 3.5, 4 years. So I am kind of skeptical that they will follow it. Kind of. I hope that they follow it to a T, and the sooner the better. Because let's be honest, they don't have much time. Like I said, it's only Trump is going to be here for only 4 years less. 2 months. Mm-hmm. So once he leaves, all this shit could be undone, for better or for worse. So this would probably be
the
something.
Price dip if he leaves and Democrats win. We're talking immediate 20%. You get a huge buying opportunity. Now, mind you, that'll be from 500,000 down to 400,000, but it'll feel like a buying opportunity anyway.
It always feels like a buying opportunity. That's the funny thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Even when we hit 108 and change, whatever the high was, I was still like, I can't buy enough of it, right? You just look what's going on around us, and you understand the properties that is Bitcoin. I can't believe even 108 is, somebody would say this is overpriced. I don't understand. Against what? It just, anyways. I want to talk about a lesson in self-custody, and the United States should take heed here, because this is something Everybody's got to know. This guy named David Fredericks, he's on Twitter or X. He wrote, I was scammed over the weekend and lost my Bitcoin assets. What not to do? I received several calls regarding my Coinbase account. I'm not trying to shit on Coinbase. This can happen with any account out there. Apparently, it was compromised. Email sent to me. AI assist called. Connected me to a live person. Said my Coinbase and wallet were breached. Sent me verification via fake Coinbase email/ghost phone number. And he says, don't accept any calls from quote unquote Coinbase. Well, whatever it is. The onus is on you. For everybody out there that has Bitcoin, this is a strong reason why you want to learn how to do self-custody. Because if you don't, if you rely on somebody else to hold on to your Bitcoin, not only could that get stolen because somebody else is holding it, not only could get rugged because the exchange could go tits up, but in another case, there could be a scam that gets access to your Bitcoin, like this guy. So I stress for people out there, try to use non-custodial exchange. In Canada, we have Bull Bitcoin, we have Bitcoin Wells, we have two exchanges that you could easily buy as non-custodial. Even in the United States, Bitcoin Well is operational. I don't know if all 50 states, but I don't know. Maybe it is. And check them out. But that's what I suggest. Learn the art of self-custody, because if you don't, it's going to be to your detriment. And it's not that hard to do. And that's my end of story.
Where do you come down on, now we've talked about this a little bit. I see more and more this idea of, I would say, institutional multi-sig becoming more prevalent. Places like OnRamp, where you have like two, do you think this is going to be a way for people who are in Bitcoin to just, I don't want to use the word abstain, but definitely pass their responsibilities off a little bit to more than one party, so that you're not necessarily risking your coins by giving your custody over to an exchange, for example, but also you're not taking full responsibility? Where do you come down on a service like that? They're becoming more popular. And I think a lot of Bitcoiners are affiliated, associated, supporting, advertising for, et cetera, these different options. Where do you come down on all that?
Not a big fan of them. It's just holding on to your 12 or 24 words and maybe a passphrase on top of that. How difficult is that? And there's multiple ways you could do it. Either you could remember it, or you could secure it in multiple places physically that it's hard to get access. That's what I would suggest people do. Don't rely on somebody else. And if you do that, what happens if you don't get access to them?
Yeah.
And then somehow, you lost one of your keys and you need that third one, and they have it, and they're not going to, because you can't get access to them. You don't have access to your Bitcoin. Do it yourself. There's way better ways. That's my 2 cents. I could be wrong, but we used to remember telephone numbers, right? And there was 7 digits per telephone. You used to remember, 5, 10 different numbers, like off the top of your head. It's 12 words, man.
Yeah.
It's 12 fucking words.
From when you were a kid, you remember those phone numbers still?
I still, yeah. I still remember my first telephone number from the first house I lived in, which was
I can think about all my Saturday morning buddies. Get the hockey guys together. I can probably do all those phone numbers still.
See? And that's 7 digits, and all those people, it's only and if you really want to break it down, it's only the first 4 characters. If you want to do the 12 or 24 words, that's what really matters. But the words are easier to remember than 4 characters. So if we can do it, we have the ability. We just choose not to. Don't pass this off. It's not worth it. Mike
in the chat, I'll pin it. A lot of people will eventually use banks to custody their Bitcoin. I have had this suggested to me a number of times by people. When we talk about, how important it is to store your keys in a secure way, why don't you just let the bank do it?
Yeah. And he's probably right that a lot of people will do it.
This is so wrong.
Exactly. Doesn't mean it's correct. Yeah. It's just people are accustomed to trusting somebody like the bank to do it. It's one thing if you trust him with your Canadian dollars, US dollars, and there's an insurance per account in case something happens, because then where does it come from? Well, in essence, it's unlimited supply. But theoretically with Bitcoin, though, if something happens with it, how could you be made whole? If enough damage is made, it's potentially everything is lost, and you just, I don't want to think about that. But one thing I want to, more than anything, pick your brain, Joey, about this, because I think you have an opinion, is El Salvador and the IMF, right? There's been a lot of discussion here, and I am confused. as to what is happening here. We had the IMF imposing restrictions on El Salvador for buying Bitcoin. It was pretty clear in the language in which was included. And the loan, I forget the dollar value, 1 point something billion, or it's irrelevant, the loan value. The gist of it is they borrowed money from the IMF, and in exchange, one of the things they gave up was they're not going to buy Bitcoin. But it seems like they're still buying more, because if you look at the Bitcoin office, they're showing that they're buying, or they're claiming they're buying more. And then you go on the website, their balance goes up in terms of how much Bitcoin they have. They have over 6,100 Bitcoin as of later last week. Bukele is saying that it's not stopping with respect to the buying of Bitcoin. So I'm wondering, what are your thoughts here? Because I'm confused. How could they still buy Bitcoin, but yet go through this whole exercise with the IMF?
My thoughts are that it's stopping when the IMF tells them to stop.
So you think they're still doing
April,
it?
Right? April is the day it's supposed to stop. Yeah, I think he's full of shit. I think that guy's probably getting tons of interview requests from huge Bitcoin podcasts, so we give an opportunity to go long form and tell him exactly what's happening and what to expect, and he doesn't do it. Why? Because he's full of shit. And he knows he's full of shit. And he's been on these podcasts before. I like to point out to people that he's a big advertising and marketing guy before he was a politician. He's not, new to this idea of public image, public opinion, and shaping those two things favorably, even when, the waters may be a little rougher than you're used to. And so when people say, oh, he's still buying, it's not over. Listen to me. It's over. It may not be over today, but that IMF announcement where they talk about limiting the Bitcoin restrictions, the IMF is not out there to be made a fool of. And so I would expect that he gets a phone call every time he tweets about this stuff, every time he talks about it, and that eventually these buys will stop, and they will stop sometime this year. I don't know when, but they will stop, because the IMF is predatory. And like I said before, the IMF doesn't come to you, and debate with you about the merits of the things in the agreement that you have with them. They overthrow your government. They destabilize your country. They kill you. They're not there to negotiate. And so when people are like, oh, they're still buying, don't be stupid. Don't be you have an opportunity here to walk it back, take your lumps, and just get off the train, because it's over there. And by the way, I saw that, was it Julian maybe? Tweeted that the country also closed a Bitcoin only, or a animal hospital that was being funded by Bitcoiners. That's brutal.
That's been going for a while. That's
brutal. This guy, he's
wait, what's wrong with that? Because this animal hospital has been funded by Bitcoin.
I don't know.
Something wrong with it?
I don't know. But the point is that this guy, again, he's God, the amount of fucking dick riding this guy.
Who is the IMF?
Who is it? What do you mean?
If you have to say, what country is the going
Europe.
pulling this?
It's Germany, France.
Isn't it the United States that's really pulling the strings for IMF?
Nah, I don't
know.
Think so. Nah, I think it's an EU outfit more than anything. UN adjacent. As much as the United States is interested in that stuff, or funding it directly or indirectly, I think they're starting to pull out of it. And it's hard for me, Len, to imagine that the U.S. cares that much about El Salvador and their 500,000 Bitcoin or whatever they have. Maybe it's probably even less than that. I don't know how many exactly they have. I don't keep up with it, but
so the largest contributor is United States.
They're the largest contributor to everything, though, right? So I don't personally think that matters that much. What I care more about is what the ethics and the sort of political / policy direction are, and those are not United States centric. If they were, the United States would not be pulling out of these things left, right, and center. So, when people say oh, this guy, he's so well spoken, he's this and that. Do you really think McCormick or Danny or whoever's doing that Bitcoin show now are not reaching out to this guy? He's been on that show before. Do you really think Preston Pish is not reaching out to him? Do you really think Simply Clickbait's not reaching out to him?
Anyone who wants to get views is going to reach out to him. And
if he wanted to speak to the Bitcoiners who are rightfully, as you mentioned, they're confused, I think, in the sort of most generous interpretation, and angry in the least. If he wanted to speak to them, he could, but instead, what do you get? Right? You get silence, tweets, we're buying, we're going to keep buying. Well, it doesn't look like it. The IMF doesn't seem to think so. And, the IMF is like the Globetrotters, they ain't losing once they get into the arena with somebody, a lot of the time anyway. So, again, El Salvador is a second, third world country, they're not a power or anything. So, Let's see. I mean, Len, if you had to, this is the other thing I tell people, if you had to bet your life one way or the other that they would either keep buying or stop, like what sane person would actually bet they're going to keep buying after the last 3 weeks?
I have no opinion on this. I have none. I guess I'm getting conflicting information. Bukele is saying one thing and they're still buying. I don't know when the deadline is. I have no fucking clue.
Yeah.
So
it's April.
that's why
I keep seeing April.
I don't know.
April, but maybe I'm wrong.
So that's why I can't say that they're going to stop or they're going to continue. I'm just getting all these conflicting information, and it's hard for me to compute it.
There's tons of it, and like this is why this guy, who in their right mind looks at this and goes, "Wow, I'm not surprised." Like this guy should be going on a podcast or something. Mr. Media, Mr. Bitcoin, Mr. He didn't do shit. And by the way, I think I said this on the show a little while ago. Everyone talking on this program, in the chat, in my DMs, in my group chats about how El Salvador's bonds are outperforming, blah, blah, blah. They're outperforming because of Bitcoin. No, they were outperforming because the IMF is coming back into the picture and people will buy that debt because it's basically backed by, infinite loan power. So to me, it's just like, whatever, man. I personally don't care about this. Now, I do hope that doesn't go back to the gang-ridden sort of filth spot that it was 3 years ago before this guy came into power, or whatever year that was. So 21 or 22, I forget. But, as a Bitcoin country, and also, unpopular here, so hold your tomatoes, but how much of a Bitcoin country was it really? How much of it was really a Bitcoin country? It seems to me like a lot of top-down legislating Chivo, legislating businesses have to take this stuff, legislating that even big corporates have to have a Bitcoin option. Like is that what we're about? Is that
they were the first country out there to allow people to pay with Bitcoin.
They allowed and legislated that everybody had to take it as well. That's the problem. And
right.
So allowing people to pay, right? That should stimulate demand if you have the right idea. But forcing people to take it is a whole different side of that equation, and it's not the way that we should be doing things, in my opinion.
There's some truth to that, but I'm trying to say that the fact that they allowed people to spend Bitcoin, no other country that I could think of, I could be wrong, there might be, but you were able to go there and just simply exchange Bitcoin for whatever. Mm-hmm. And people, not a lot, but there are people that traveled there and used their Bitcoin to do their daily thing.
Another huge nuke. The people who paid for the passports, or talk about a rug pull.
It was a gamble, and
you were criticized for saying it was a gamble. By the way,
it's always a gamble.
All these people who are like, "Oh, you're just mad. You don't get it. This is in it for the long haul. This he understands Bitcoin."
Did I say it was a gamble before? I
don't know if you did or not, but we definitely were. We on this program are never as sure as everyone else is that this thing is just going swimmingly everywhere you look. We are never like that.
I'm just trying to say, when there's an opportunity to get a passport or some document to live in another country, it's always a gamble because you don't know what it's going to be like when it is you want to move there. If it's going to be tomorrow, 5 years, 10 years, the world is changing. And so the landscape in a country where you want to go into could potentially change as well. That's why it is a gamble. Not to say you shouldn't do these things and start getting documents and all that, because it's better to have it than not, but you just don't know what's going to happen when the time is right for you to do it. So
ask Mark Carney. Mark Carney's got a few passports. He's got the right idea, that guy.
You got 3 of them, but 2 of them are kind of like very similar. One is Ireland and one is England, right? Am I right? Or
I don't know.
So
I don't have either one of those. So
yeah. Well, we don't have much time because I kind of want it as early. The Bitcoin.
Rip one more story. You got a short one?
This is one I want to get through. Blockstream.
Yeah.
And Blockstream, the company, they're behind Jade, they're behind Liquid, the satellite, that Bitcoin satellite, so you could get. You could
love that idea, by the way. We're critical of Blockstream sometimes, but I like that idea.
Yeah, well, the satellite is cool.
Yeah.
Liquid, I've talked about it. Jade, we were, especially the new version of Jade, doesn't seem like to be a big hit. Either way,
did I tell you I got my Jade out like 2 months ago or a month ago when we were talking about it, just to see if that camera was as bad as I remember? It's bad. It's like almost impossibly bad.
And we talked about the newer version of the Jade having a better camera, but still it's nowhere near what you want.
Yeah.
Whatever. I want to talk about Blockstream. They were raising capital because just last October they raised $210 million with an M. for a round of financing, and then they just did what's been called a multi-billion-dollar investment, and this past week. So they've been raising capital quite a bit in the last 5 months. And for this one, they're saying it's going to be to launch 3 new institutional funds, including 2 that will enable Bitcoin lending. All right. The 3 funds will be launched in April, so it's coming up next month if all goes well. One is Bitcoin-backed loans. Second is crypto borrowing with US dollars as collateral. And the third is hedge fund strategies. And I don't know, I look at this and maybe I'm wrong here, but it seems like this is a steaming pile of shit. Maybe the Bitcoin-backed loans, there may be some value there. I can understand why somebody wouldn't want to sell their Bitcoin because of tax, so they could simply want to just borrow and then pay it back later. I could get my head around that. But the other two, like the crypto borrowing with the US dollar as collateral or hedge fund strategies, I'm looking at this, right? Like, is there anything that you can say, oh, this is a fantastic idea? This is a Bitcoin idea. These are feed ideas, right? Am I wrong? And from what is being reported, this is multi-billion-dollar investment. So they're putting in a lot of money into this. This is a huge idea they have that's going to take them to the next level. The fuck is this? Like, like Adam Back, he's been a great player in the Bitcoin. Like, he's been there from the beginning. He's chatted with Satoshi, right? But this kind of move, like, I'm critical of this. This is pathetic, if you ask me.
Yeah. I don't much add. I mean, it's the idea that you would ever raise money for a Bitcoin hedgy. I can't figure that out. Who's asking for that? Where's the market for that? I thought Bitcoiners were about custody, and I do like the collateral thing. Like, I think there's a real future in Bitcoin as collateral for fiat loans, for sure. Be responsible with those things as always. Ledin, by the way, former sponsor of the show. Love Ledin, love Mauricio. Way ahead of the curve on that. Way ahead of the curve. So good for them. But this other stuff, like, do you know, I mean, you and me talk to a lot of Bitcoiners, different ages, different knowledge levels. Like, you're still helping a lot of new people every so often I see in the show chat. Is anybody asking you for this, Len, do you know of any places I can park some money a la a hedge fund with my Bitcoin? Is anyone asking for that? Has anyone in Bitcoin ever mentioned that? Ever? I don't
recall it being asked that for a long time, but the fuck, I don't know. I'm not certainly asking for it, and I don't think people should be asking for it. But I don't understand why they go through this. There's way better things that they could build on, and it's not to say they stop building. They're still building
There's no money in it. Like, they can't make the best wallet, right? Like, that market, in my opinion, is more or less done. You could talk about Ledger, Treasure, whatever you call it, and then obviously the King Cold Card. And so, like, after those 3 things, like, what market share is left for you? That's not a moneymaker. The satellite, cool, but also not a moneymaker. Liquid network, moneymaker? I don't know. I can't think of a way to make that the key element of your financial strategy. So what's left, right? Financialization of Bitcoin. I think you're going to see more and more of this when any market matures. You see companies realizing that they've basically hit the peak of their powers in their market. And by the way, this is not just a Bitcoin thing. It's every market. So I'll point you to one easy example. The iPhone, okay? Fantastic piece of hardware. But the candy bar phone in general is basically topped out. There's not a lot more features you can put into these things. The camera's only going to be so good. My eye can only see so many frames per second when it takes a video in high def, right? Whatever dirty shit you're sending to the broad you met last night. She doesn't care if it's in 4K 120. It doesn't matter to her. So, like, the phone itself is experiencing diminishing returns. So what do companies like Apple do? Well, Len, they go into financialization. Now Apple has a buy now, pay later program baked into their wallet. Now Apple has, other, subscription services and all these things. They're financializing. They're pinching pennies from people who are already in the ecosystem. And I think Blockstream is trying to do the same thing. That's my guess. Because that's what happens when markets mature. You need to find ways to extract more value where none exists in your old model. And that, to me, is what's going on here. Do I have that right? Am I crazy?
It seems sound strategy that what they would do this, but it's still very fiat, right? Like,
I'm not saying it's right, but you're right.
Exactly that. And Adam Back, like, we could hold him to we should be holding him to a higher standard. He should be doing things, in my opinion, more of the Bitcoin way. And I feel bad. I don't want to hold anybody, especially somebody like that. Don't want to be critical of them, but if they're part of a company that's making a stupid decision, and in my eyes, this looks like a stupid decision that could be proven wrong in the future. Wow. I'm going to be critical. It's too bad.
He'll be on a podcast soon talking about this, I think.
For sure.
I don't know whose show, but I'll be listening because I do want to hear what he has to say. He's at least learned that right, I think.
Now, it said in the chat that they heard that the Jade has a backdoor in his chip.
Guillaume up to no good in the chat. Stirring the pot. Fire starter.
I don't think they don't have a secure element chip. They use the blind oracle as a way to get around it. So that can't be the black, and I heard, I could be wrong, but I thought the hardware was open source.
I'm not saying anything, but there's more in the chat for people who are on audio that Guillaume is saying, but I'm not going to write it or say it because
that's why I didn't want to put a name.
Prefer not to open myself up to anything. But
that's why, and that's why I didn't put a name when I read the comment, just in case. I was very strategic with that. But you know what, Joey? I think we could end it now, or we go one more. I don't give a fuck.
Let's wrap it up. Let's go over to the Canadian side of things. So if you're on audio, well, you know what to do. I don't have to tell you. If you're on video, stay here. We got lots more to talk about tonight, including, but not limited to, the anointing of King CARNEY. We'll be right back. Until next time, take care of yourselves.
And don't be a cock.